Today, I stand before you, a shell of the woman I once was. My heart, a shattered mosaic of grief and terror, beats a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Just yesterday, I buried my beloved husband, the man who was my world, my rock, my everything. And as the last shovelful of earth fell upon his coffin, a new nightmare began. My own son, my flesh and blood, stood before me, his face contorted with a hatred I had never witnessed, his eyes blazing with a chilling fire as he screamed, his voice raw and guttural, "Today, you're the next." Can you even begin to imagine the horror, the sheer, unadulterated terror that seized me in that moment? Was I wrong to feel a primal fear of my own child? Tell me, what would you have done if your son, your only son, had uttered those words to you just hours after his father's funeral? It all started, I suppose, with the day I met John. He was everything I wasn't: calm, steady, and incredibly kind. I was a whirlwind of anxieties and creative chaos, a struggling artist trying to make ends meet in a city that felt too big and too indifferent. We met at a local art gallery, a small, unassuming space where I was showcasing my latest, rather abstract, collection. He lingered by my paintings longer than anyone else, a thoughtful expression on his face, and when he finally spoke, his voice was a gentle rumble that instantly put me at ease. He didn't just see the colors and shapes. He saw the stories I was trying to tell, the emotions I was pouring onto the canvas. We talked for hours that evening, a connection sparking between us that felt both immediate and profound. He was a brilliant architect, meticulous and organized, a stark contrast to my free-spirited nature, and yet we complemented each other perfectly. Within a year, we were married, and soon after, our beautiful son, Michael, arrived. Michael was, from the very beginning, a bright and energetic child. He had John's sharp intellect and my artistic flair, a fascinating blend of both our personalities. We adored him, showered him with love, and tried to give him every opportunity we could. John, especially, was a devoted father. He taught Michael how to build intricate Lego structures, spent hours reading to him, and always made time for his son, no matter how demanding his work became. We were, by all accounts, a happy family, a picture of domestic bliss. Of course, like any family, we had our ups and downs. Michael, as he grew older, began to display a fiercely independent streak, and sometimes a volatile temper. He was incredibly sensitive, taking criticisms to heart, and would often lash out when he felt misunderstood or wronged. We tried to navigate these outbursts with patience and understanding, always emphasizing communication and empathy. We wanted him to feel heard, to feel loved, even when he was difficult. The first real crack in our idyllic facade appeared when Michael was around 15. He had always been an exceptional student, but suddenly his grades plummeted. He became withdrawn, spending most of his time locked in his room, his vibrant energy replaced by a sullen silence. We tried to talk to him, to get him to open up, but he just pushed us away. He started to hang out with a new group of friends, older kids, who seemed to have a rebellious streak. We tried to guide him, to gently steer him away from what we perceived as a problematic path, but our attempts were met with defiance and resentment. John, ever the rational one, tried to reason with him, explaining the importance of his education and the choices he was making. I, on the other hand, tried to appeal to his emotional side, reminding him of our love and our hopes for his future. Nothing worked. It felt like we were speaking different languages, two desperate parents trying to reach a son who was slipping further and further away. The tension in our home grew palpable. Arguments became more frequent, louder, and more painful. Michael accused us of not understanding him, of being too controlling, of wanting to stifle his individuality. He would often direct his anger particularly at John, seeing his father's calm logic as a form of condescension. John, in turn, grew increasingly frustrated and heartbroken by Michael's behavior. He just couldn't understand why his son, whom he had poured so much love into, was rejecting everything they had tried to instill in him. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to mediate, trying to bridge the ever-widening chasm between them. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and I felt like I was failing everyone. Then came the incident with the car. Michael, without our permission, took John's car for a joyride with his friends. He was caught speeding, and the police called us. The shock and disappointment were immense. John, usually so composed, was furious. He grounded Michael indefinitely, took away his phone, and imposed a strict curfew. Michael reacted with an explosive rage. He screamed at John, calling him unfair, a tyrant, and even worse. He punched a hole in his bedroom wall, a stark symbol of the anger simmering within him. That night, something shifted. The love in Michael's eyes for his father seemed to dim, replaced by a cold, simmering resentment. As the years passed, Michael's behavior continued to be a source of immense worry. He never fully recovered his academic drive, scraping by with mediocre grades. His relationship with John remained strained, a perpetual tension hanging between them. He would often make sarcastic remarks to John, challenging his authority, and dismiss his advice with a wave of his hand. John, bless his patient heart, never gave up trying to connect with him. He would invite Michael to watch sports with him, to work on projects around the house, to do anything that might foster a bond. But Michael almost always declined, preferring to spend his time with his friends or alone in his room. I often wondered if our attempts to guide him had backfired, if our efforts to correct his path had only pushed him further away. Michael eventually left for college, a small university far from home. We hoped the change of environment, the independence, would help him mature, would allow him to find his footing. For a while it seemed to work. He called more frequently, sounded happier, and even expressed some remorse for his past behavior. John and I allowed ourselves to hope. Perhaps this was the turning point, the beginning of a renewed relationship with our son. But it was a false dawn. During his second year, Michael dropped out, citing a lack of motivation and a desire to find himself. He returned home, but not the changed man we had hoped for. He was still restless, still angry, and the resentment towards his father seemed to have festered rather than healed. John, always the provider, tried to help Michael find a job, offering connections through his architectural firm, suggesting different career paths. But Michael rejected every offer, every suggestion, seeing them as further attempts to control his life. He accused John of trying to live his life for him, of not believing in his own potential. The arguments escalated again, becoming more vicious, more personal. I remember one evening, the air thick with unspoken animosity, Michael yelled at John, "You never cared about what I wanted. You only cared about your perfect little plan for me." John, his face pale, simply walked away, the heartbreak evident in his slumped shoulders. It was a wound that never truly healed between them. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, watching my son drift further and further away, his heart seemingly hardened against his father. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have kept trying to bridge the gap? Would you have given up? What would you have said to either of them? The final blow, the one that truly broke our family apart, came unexpectedly, brutally. John had been feeling unwell for a few weeks, a persistent cough and fatigue that he dismissed as stress from work. He was a busy man, always pushing himself, and we attributed it to his demanding schedule. But then, one evening, he collapsed. We rushed him to the hospital, and the diagnosis was a cruel, swift punch to the gut. An aggressive form of cancer, already too advanced. The doctors gave him only a few months. The news shattered me. John, my steady, strong John, was fading before my eyes. I spent every waking moment by his side, holding his hand, whispering words of love and comfort, trying to memorize every detail of his face. Michael, to my surprise, seemed to soften slightly. He visited John in the hospital, albeit briefly, and a few times. I even saw a flicker of the old tenderness in his eyes when he looked at his father. John, with the last vestiges of his strength, tried to talk to Michael, to express his love, to mend the fractured relationship. He apologized for any perceived failings, for any moments he might have made Michael feel unheard. Michael listened, his face unreadable, and then simply nodded, saying he understood. I desperately hoped, in those final, heartbreaking days, that a reconciliation was possible, that they could find peace before it was too late. John passed away peacefully in his sleep, his hand still clutched in mine. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The funeral was a blur of tears, hushed condolences, and the suffocating weight of grief. I remember standing by the graveside, the cold wind biting at my exposed skin, watching as John's coffin was lowered into the earth. Michael stood beside me, stoic, his face a mask of grief, or perhaps something else I couldn't quite decipher. I reached out for his hand, a silent plea for comfort, for shared sorrow. He recoiled slightly, almost imperceptibly, and I withdrew my hand, a fresh wave of pain washing over me. As the last mourners dispersed, leaving me alone with Michael by the fresh mound of earth, a strange quiet descended. I looked at my son, wanting to embrace him, to grieve with him, to find solace in our shared loss. But his eyes, when they met mine, held no comfort, no sorrow. Instead, there was a chilling emptiness, a cold, hard glint that sent shivers down my spine. And then he spoke. His voice was low at first, a guttural whisper that seemed to come from a deep, dark place within him. "He's gone," he said, and I thought, for a fleeting moment, that he was simply stating the obvious, processing his grief. But then his voice rose, each word laced with venom, his face twisting into a grotesque mask of hatred. "He's finally gone, and you know what, Mother?" He snarled, stepping closer, his breath hot on my face. "Today you're the next." The words, sharp and brutal, sliced through the already raw wounds of my heart. The world around me spun, the cemetery fading into a blurry haze. My son, my own son, had just threatened my life, hours after burying his father. The terror was all, consuming, a cold hand gripping my throat, stealing my breath. I stumbled backward, my legs suddenly too weak to support me, my mind reeling. I don't remember much after that, only the crushing weight of fear. The image of his hate-filled eyes burned into my memory. I ran blindly, instinctively, not knowing where I was going, only that I had to get away. I ended up at a friend's house, a kind soul who took me in, no questions asked, only comforting arms and hot tea. I spent the next few days in a state of shock, barely eating, barely sleeping, the words "today you're the next," echoing endlessly in my mind. How could my son, the boy I loved, say such a thing? What had I done to deserve such hatred? Was this a manifestation of his grief, a twisted cry for help? Or was it something far more sinister? The police, when I finally mustered the courage to call them, listened with a mixture of skepticism and concern. They advised me to file a restraining order, to stay away from Michael, and to seek psychological help for myself. They couldn't or wouldn't take his words as a direct threat without further evidence, but they did promise to keep an eye on him. It was a hollow comfort. How do you get a restraining order against your own son? How do you accept that the child you raised, the boy you nurtured, could harbor such dark intentions? I've tried to process it all, to understand the depths of his anger. Was it all the years of perceived criticism, the feeling of being misunderstood? Was it the car incident, the grounding, the arguments, or was it something deeper, something rooted in his own complex psyche that I, as his mother, had failed to see? I look back at every conversation, every interaction, searching for clues, for signs I might have missed. I replay the last few months of John's life, wondering if Michael's softening was genuine or just a calculated act. The questions gnaw at me, relentless and unforgiving. I haven't seen Michael since that day. He's moved out of the family home, I hear, and is living with one of his friends. He hasn't tried to contact me, and I, paralyzed by fear and heartbreak, haven't dared to contact him. My world has been irrevocably altered. I've lost my husband, and in a way, I've lost my son too. I'm left with a profound sense of loneliness, a gnawing fear, and a heavy burden of unanswered questions. I wake up every morning with a sense of dread, wondering if today is the day Michael will come looking for me. I check my locks multiple times, jump at every unfamiliar sound, and the shadows that once brought comfort now fill me with unease. I've started therapy, trying to unravel the tangled mess of emotions, to find a way to heal, to find some semblance of peace. But how do you heal from a wound inflicted by your own child? How do you reconcile the boy you loved with the man who threatened your life? My journey to understanding, to healing, is just beginning, and it's a terrifying one. I share this story not for pity, but to seek some form of understanding, some insight from those who might have experienced similar betrayals, similar heartbreaks. This isn't just a story about grief. It's a story about the devastating complexities of family, the shadows that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most loving relationships. It's a testament to the unpredictable nature of human emotion and the profound, enduring pain that can result from a child's hatred. Like this video, if you were on my side, if you understand the horror and the confusion I'm facing. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories of human struggle and resilience, and maybe, just maybe, some stories of hope. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Tell me, what do you truly believe motivated my son? Is there any hope for reconciliation? And how do I move forward from this unspeakable trauma? I'll see you all in the next story.